6 minutes. That's how long it took me to buy the land out from under the HOA president who tried evicting me. I'm Garrett. Right now I'm standing on my dock, the one Darlene Pritchard claimed was illegal, watching her ugly cry into her phone while her husband loads their white Lexus. Vanity plate. LK Life. Past tense. 3 months ago, she handed me an eviction notice for my grandfather's cabin, built 1947. My family owned this land 78 years. She'd been here 3. Gave me 30 days to vacate or face the sheriff, plus $250 daily in fines. She owed $18,000 in property taxes. I paid them. Now I own her boat launch. Ever had someone try stealing your family home? Drop your story below. Before we dismantle her empire, where are you watching from? I guarantee half of you are fighting an HOA tyrant right now. Let me rewind to April, when I inherited paradise and met the devil in pastels. My name is Garrett Holloway, 52. Spent 28 years as swing shift foreman at a Pittsburgh steel mill. The kind of work where you earned every dollar with your spine. Plant closed in 2019. Marriage ended the same year. My daughter Shauna moved to Denver. I stayed in a rental that smelled like regret. Then my uncle called about my grandfather's cabin. Grandpa built it in 1946, 2 bedrooms, log walls, stone chimney, 400 feet of Lake Crispin shoreline. Bought the land for $800 after the war. When he died in '98, my dad inherited it but rarely visited. Dad passed in 2009. The cabin sat empty 16 years. Taxes paid automatically. I'd been there twice as a kid. Remembered cedar smoke and loons calling across black water. Lake Crispin, 14-mile perimeter, 90% forested, 30 cabins total. Most families had been there since the 50s. Blue-collar folks who saved for years to own a piece of peace. Then 2015 hit. Developers bought South Shore lots, built McMansions with irrigation systems and 3-car garages. By 2018, the new crowd formed the Lake Crispin Property Owners Association. Wanted standards, rules, covenants. Old-timers opted out. My grandfather never joined, neither did Dad. Only 20 of 30 properties signed up, but it was enough to make the newcomers feel official and powerful. I drove up late April, winding road through wet pine, gravel crunching under my truck like breaking glass. The cabin stood in a clearing, roof sagging, dock gray with rot, but that view. Glass water stretching to the tree line, nothing but silence and sky. First week, I just breathed. Patched roof, replaced deck boards, planned dock repairs, maybe rent the slips, make some income. Retirement was supposed to be simple. Then Darlene Pritchard arrived. Tuesday morning, 2nd week. I'm hauling lumber when this woman marches up my drive. Late 50s, white capris, yellow cardigan, frosted blonde helmet hair, sunglasses you could land planes with, clipboard in hand. Her husband Roger had moved them here in 2017. He's a CPA, quiet as a church mouse. She got herself elected HOA president in 2020 by a margin of 11-9. Been wielding that clipboard like a scepter ever since. You must be the new owner. Statement, not question. Garrett Holloway. Darlene Pritchard, HOA president. Smile like catching a thief in church. We need to discuss your dock. I set down the wood. What about it? It extends into HOA waters. $1,200 in back fees, $85 monthly going forward. I laughed. Ma'am, my grandfather built this in 1947. Her smile went rigid. We conducted a survey in 2019. Your dock violates setbacks. Payment due in 10 days, or I report you to county zoning. I showed her grandpa's original survey. Clear property lines, legal. She glanced at it like a child's drawing. Outdated. Our survey supersedes it. Says who? The association. You can join and dispute it. $400 annually. I'm not joining. Then you're in violation. She handed me a printed notice, my name already typed in. Pre-planned. Blessed day, Mr. Holloway. She walked to her white Lexus. Vanity plate LK Life. Heels clicking like gunshots on gravel. Drove off trailing dust and gardenia perfume thick enough to choke on, smothering the honest smell of cut pine and lake water. I stood holding that paper, listening to Loon's call, my grandfather's land, my father's land, mine. 2 weeks later, certified letter. The entire cabin now sat on disputed HOA land, 30 days to vacate, $250 per day and fines after. I read it 3 times, called Shauna. Dad, she said, voice tight, get a lawyer. Today. I looked at the lake, at the dock I'd been fixing. At 78 years of family history, this woman thought she could erase with a clipboard and a fake smile. Yeah, I said. I will. 3 days after that eviction letter, I woke up to find 4 people standing on my porch. I'd been up late researching property law, fell asleep at the kitchen table with my laptop still open. Morning light was barely cutting through the pines when I heard car doors slamming in my driveway. 3 vehicles I didn't recognize. The guy in front was maybe 34, pastel pink polo shirt, Ray-Bans pushed up on his head, phone out filming. Mr. Holloway, I'm Todd Brennan. We're from the HOA Environmental Compliance Committee. We need to inspect your septic system. I stepped onto the porch in bare feet, still wearing yesterday's shirt. You need to leave. Sir, if your system's failing, it affects the entire lake. We have a responsibility. You have zero authority. This is private property. The woman next to him, yoga pants, $300 hiking boots, crossed her arms. We're trying to protect property values. Darlene mentioned you've been hostile. Darlene can mention whatever she wants from someone else's driveway. Todd kept his phone raised, recording. Sir, threatening behavior isn't helping your case. I counted to 5. My dad taught me that. Count to 5 before you do something you'll regret. I'm going inside. If you're still here in 60 seconds, I'm calling the sheriff for trespassing. They stood there another 30 seconds, then Todd lowered his phone. We'll be filing a report with county code enforcement. Expect a visit. They left. I watched their cars disappear down the gravel drive, then sat on my porch steps and laughed. Couldn't help it. The whole thing was so absurd. That night, a buddy from town texted me a screenshot. Darlene had posted in the Lake Crispin Neighbors Facebook group, 400 members, most of them not even on the lake. Her post showed a photo of my mud-covered truck and the lumber pile by my dock. Caption, concerned about new resident refusing to comply with community standards, possible environmental violations, septic, aggressive behavior toward volunteers. Is this the Lake Crispin we want for our grandchildren? 37 comments in the first hour. People I'd never met calling me selfish, dangerous, a threat to their investment. I sat there staring at my phone until 2 in the morning. Finally called Shauna. Dad, it's 2 a.m. I know, sorry, I just needed to hear your voice. Silence then. What happened? I told her about the inspection ambush, the Facebook post, the spray paint I'd found on my dock pilings that afternoon. Orange X marks on all 4 posts like they were marking it for demolition. Remember when I was 16, she said? Principal Kowalski wanted to suspend me for that essay about censorship? Yeah. You walked into his office and told him if he punished me for speaking truth, you'd bury him in paperwork. You taught me bullies only win if you let them, so don't let them, Dad. The next morning, I drove to the county recorder's office. 45 minutes through hill country, windows down, trying to clear my head. The office smelled like burnt coffee and decades of paper dust. Woman behind the counter looked about 67, gray hair pulled back, reading glasses on a chain. Name tag, Irene. Help you? I laid out both surveys. My grandfather's from 1947, the HOA's from 2019. Which one's legal? She studied them maybe 90 seconds. Then she actually laughed, a rough, knowing sound. The HOA one? Worthless. How? Boundary changes need a licensed surveyor's stamp plus signatures from every adjacent property owner. This has neither. She tapped the HOA document. It's just a drawing somebody made. Might as well be crayon on a napkin. My chest loosened for the first time in days. Can they still use it against me? They can try, but any judge with half a brain will toss it. I've seen this before. New HOA shows up, starts claiming land that's been private for decades, hoping nobody fights back. She made 3 certified copies of my deed. Keep these safe. 1 in a safe deposit box if you're smart. Who filed the HOA survey? She checked her computer. Roger Pritchard. Submitted it himself while I was on vacation. Bypassed the normal review. Roger. Darlene's husband. The quiet CPA who'd never said 2 words to me. There's a retired attorney in town, Irene said, handing me a business card. Margaret Lords. She's helped a few folks fight HOA overreach. Tell her I sent you. I drove home feeling something close to solid ground under my feet again. When I pulled into my driveway, I saw the spray paint. 4 orange X marks on my dock pilings, still wet enough to smell the chemical tang from 20 feet away. I grabbed my phone, took photos from every angle. Then I posted them to the Facebook group with all 3 certified deed copies attached. Caption: Here's what HOA harassment looks like when you refuse to surrender property your family owned for 78 years. I have the documents. Do you? 140 reactions in 90 minutes. Mostly laughing emojis from old-timer families. A few supportive comments from people who'd been quietly watching Darlene operate for years. 2 hours later, I was blocked from the group. Didn't matter. The message landed. People were starting to see past Darlene's Concerned Neighbor Act. And I had Margaret Lords' number in my pocket. Margaret Lords lived in a Victorian on Main Street. white paint peeling but dignified. She answered in jeans and flannel, reading glasses on a beaded chain, handshake like iron. Irene called, "Come in." Her living room was organized chaos, law books stacked high, files and milk crates labeled by year. We sat at her dining table. I spread everything out: deeds, eviction notice, Facebook screenshots, spray-painted doc photos. She read silently for 10 minutes, making notes, then looked up. "They're stealing through paperwork intimidation. File enough official documents, threaten enough legal action. Most people cave." She tapped the HOA survey. "This is fraud. Roger knew it when he filed." "Can I sue?" "Sure. Costs $50,000, takes 2 years. They'll outlast you financially." She leaned back, thinking. "You need leverage, something that makes fighting you more painful than ignoring you." "Like what?" "Their finances. People this sloppy with surveys are usually sloppy with money." She made 3 calls while I sat smelling old paper and lemon polish. 20 minutes later, she hung up, smiling. "HOA meeting minutes are public record because they use township roads. I can request them through Freedom of Information Act." "That's legal?" "If associations benefit from public infrastructure, roads, water, emergency services, certain records become accessible." "Most people don't know this loophole exists, but it's completely legitimate and surprisingly effective." She wrote a note. "Give me 10 business days." I left feeling less alone than I had in weeks. That night, my phone rang. Unknown number. "Mr. Holloway, Linda Chen, County Zoning. We received an anonymous complaint about unpermitted structures on your property. I'm required to investigate. Can you meet Thursday at 10? "Who complained?" "Can't disclose, but I have to follow up." She sounded apologetic. Thursday morning, Linda arrived. Clipboard, camera, tired eyes. Maybe 40. I showed her everything. Original 1946 building permits, septic certification from 1993, dock blueprints from 1948. All documented, all legal. She photographed it, took notes. "Mr. Holloway, you're clearly compliant, but my supervisor plays golf with Roger Pritchard twice monthly, so I still have to file a report. This is harassment." "Can't officially say that." She lowered her voice. "Off record, you're the 3rd person this year Darlene's reported to us. File a formal complaint with county administration. Create a paper trail. Patterns eventually get investigated by people higher up who actually care about system abuse." She left. I filed the complaint within the hour. 2 days later, another certified letter arrived on heavy cream paper that probably cost $3 a sheet. Pemberton and Associates letterhead. Cease and desist, claiming I operated commercial docks without permits, violated setback ordinances, conducted unpermitted business against HOA covenants. Demanded $8,500 in back dues calculated from 1998. 14 days to pay or they'd file for emergency injunction plus $250 daily penalties. The paper felt expensive between my fingers, thick and textured. I called Margaret and drove straight over. Pemberton and Associates. She read the letterhead and laughed. Judge Pemberton's son's firm. Same judge who recused himself after newspapers mentioned their golf games. She looked at me seriously. "Classic intimidation campaign. They're drowning you in legal fees and manufactured fear until you surrender property you legally own. What now? Wait 48 hours. She pulled a thick folder from her desk stack. "FOIA came back early. Township clerk felt terrible about your harassment. Look at these financials." She spread 5 years of HOA statements across the table. Income, $47,000 in member dues from 2019 to 2024. Maintenance expenses, $9,000 total, basically mowing the boat launch twice yearly. Then one line buried deep in footnotes made my pulse spike. Consulting fees to Pritchard, accounting services, $32,000. Roger's company, Darlene's husband's business. That's theft. Self-dealing, breach of fiduciary duty. Board members can't funnel association funds into their own businesses without full member disclosure, formal votes, and transparent documentation. This was deliberately buried where nobody would notice. Members never voted, never approved, probably don't even know. She grinned like a wolf. "This is your leverage. Tomorrow morning I'm taking this directly to the district attorney's office, white-collar crimes unit. Will they prosecute? Maybe. Prosecutors move cautiously. But the credible threat of criminal investigation will rattle them badly. And if the DA moves too slowly, we leak every page to that newspaper reporter covering your story. Nothing terrifies people like Darlene more than public exposure and social humiliation." I left as sunset painted the hills orange and purple. Evening air smelled like backyard grills and fresh-cut grass. Summer coming early. I didn't feel hopeful exactly. Something better. Armed. Prepared with facts and documentation ready. Darlene wanted paper warfare? Fine. Let's see how her carefully built house of lies held up when it started burning. Margaret was true to her word. The next morning, she walked into the district attorney's office with 5 years of HOA financial statements in a folder thick enough to stop a bullet. She called me that afternoon. DA's office is reviewing. They're interested but slow. White-collar crimes always are. She paused. But I also made copies for your newspaper friend. Insurance policy. I called Paul Chen at the Lake Crispin Gazette that evening. I've got something you need to see. We met at a diner off Route 9. I slid the folder across the booth. Paul's eyes went wide as he flipped through the pages, his coffee going cold while he read. $32,000 to Pritchard's own company? That's textbook self-dealing. He looked up. I can run this next week. Front page. Give them 48 hours to respond first. I want this done right. Paul sent his questions to the HOA's official email address Friday morning. Simple, direct. Why does the survey lack required signatures? Where did $32,000 in consulting fees go? Comment on the Holloway dock sabotage. Darlene's response came back in 6 hours. Not from her, from Pemberton and Associates. 3 sentences of lawyer speak that boiled down to, the HOA operates in full compliance with state law. Mr. Holloway's allegations are defamatory and will be addressed through appropriate legal channels. No actual answers, just threats wrapped in expensive letterhead. Paul ran the story Sunday morning. Lake Crispin HOA president faces questions over finances property dispute, 4,000 words. Included a sidebar explaining what self-dealing was, how HOAs could abuse power, red flags to watch for. By noon, it had 12,000 views online. By Monday, a Pittsburgh TV station called wanting B-roll footage. The Lake Crispin Neighbors Facebook group exploded. 200 comments in 12 hours. Most of them from people who'd been quietly suffering under Darlene's petty tyranny for years. Stories poured out. A widow fined $300 for leaving her trash cans visible from the road. A veteran threatened with liens for parking his work van in his own driveway. A young couple forced to repaint their shutters because the color was not within community standards. The old-timers, families who'd been on the lake since the 50s and never joined the HOA, organized fast. They scheduled an emergency HOA meeting. Darlene tried to cancel it, but the bylaws were clear. If 10 members requested a meeting, she couldn't refuse. Meeting set for July 20th, 7 p.m. at the Township Community Center. I stayed quiet, let the momentum build. Spent my days finishing the dock repairs, reinforcing the pilings with steel brackets Bryce recommended. Made them sabotage-proof this time. Then my trail cameras caught something. 4th of July weekend. I was inside making dinner when my phone buzzed with a motion alert. I pulled up the camera app. There on the screen, clear as day in the infrared glow, was Roger Pritchard, 11:17 p.m. Creeping across my property line, heading straight for one of my cameras mounted on a pine tree near the dock. He reached up, started trying to unscrew it. Then he saw the little red LED blinking, recording. His face went white even in the black and white footage. He dropped his hand and ran, stumbling through the underbrush back toward the road where I could just make out his Audi parked on the shoulder. I downloaded the clip immediately. 10 seconds of crystal clear footage of Roger Pritchard, HOA treasurer, trespassing on my property and attempting to destroy evidence. I called the county sheriff, filed a report, sent them the video. Then I posted a 10-second clip to Facebook with the caption, "Caught on camera. HOA treasurer trespassing on my property at 11:17 p.m. attempting to tamper with security equipment. Sheriff has been notified." The video went viral by local standards. 18,000 views in 2 days. Roger deleted all his social media accounts by Tuesday morning. Darlene stayed silent, which somehow felt worse than her usual attacks. Like a wounded animal going quiet before it either dies or lunges. Margaret called me Wednesday. DA filed preliminary inquiry paperwork. Not charges yet, but it's movement. Roger's lawyer reached out wanting to negotiate. Negotiate what? Drop the theft allegations, they drop the eviction. Everyone walks away. I was standing on my dock when she said it. The same dock my grandfather built in 1946. The same dock Darlene claimed was illegal. The dock I'd just spent $4,000 repairing after someone, probably Roger, had sabotaged it. I looked out at the lake, glass smooth in the evening light, and felt something cold and clear settle in my chest. No. Garrett. No negotiations, no deals. They came after my home. They tried to steal my family's land. They've been stealing from their own members for 5 years. My voice was steady, calm. I want them gone, Margaret, off this lake, out of power, whatever it takes. She was quiet for a moment, Then we don't just win, we destroy them. You ready for that? I've been ready since the day she handed me that first violation notice. Good, because the HOA meeting is in 3 days. Time to go public. I hung up and stood there as the sun set, turning the water gold, then orange, then deep purple. Somewhere across the cove a loon called, that wild, lonely sound that meant summer and home and everything worth fighting for. My grandfather had stood on this same dock 70 years ago, watching the same sunset, building something he thought would last. He was right. It would last, because I wasn't backing down. Not now, not ever. Margaret called me the morning after I refused the settlement. Meet me at my house in an hour. I found something. Her dining table was covered in documents I'd never seen before. Property records going back to the 1920s, old plat maps, deed transfers. She had that look in her eye, the one lawyers get when they've cracked a case wide open. I couldn't sleep last night, she said, pouring coffee. Something about this whole situation bothered me, so I went digging into the actual ownership history of that so-called HOA common land, the boat launch, the shoreline strip Darlene claims to control, and it was never legally transferred to the HOA, not even close. She spread out a county plat map from 1923. Originally, this parcel was designated as public access, maintained by the township. 90 acres, including the boat launch and a 50-foot strip along the north shore. I leaned closer. So the township owns it? Not anymore. In 1987, the township sold it to a private buyer named Wallace Drummond. He passed away in 2001. His estate sold the property in 2003 to a limited liability company called Lakeshore Holdings. She pulled out another document. That LLC has never filed proper beneficial ownership paperwork with the state. The only address on record is Roger Pritchard's accounting office. My coffee went cold in my hand. Roger and Darlene own the land? Privately, yes. They've been collecting HOA dues from members to maintain property they personally own, while pocketing the money. It's fraud layered on top of embezzlement. Margaret smiled grimly. But here's where it gets interesting. Lakeshore Holdings has $18,000 in delinquent property taxes. Roger stopped paying in 2021, probably betting nobody would notice a small LLC tucked away in county records. What happens with unpaid taxes? In Pennsylvania, if property taxes are delinquent for 2 or more years, the county can sell the property at a tax sale to recover what's owed. The next sale is August 10th. She looked at me seriously. If you win that auction, Garrett, you won't just own the boat launch. You'll own the access road half the HOA members use to reach their properties. You'll control the entire infrastructure of Darlene's little kingdom. I sat back, trying to process it. How much would I need? $18,000 in back taxes plus any liens. There's a $4,200 lien from a paving company for work done in 2020 that Roger never paid. So roughly $22,000, maybe a bit more depending on interest and fees. I had $24,000 in savings. Early pension withdrawal plus what I'd set aside for cabin renovations. Spending it all on a legal gamble felt insane. But the look on Darlene's face when she realized I owned her precious boat launch, that would be worth every penny. If I buy it, they'll challenge it in court. Let them try. Tax sales are ironclad in Pennsylvania. As long as you follow procedure and pay in full, that property becomes yours, free and clear. Roger and Darlene would have to sue to get it back, and good luck finding a judge who'll side with someone who deliberately didn't pay their taxes. Margaret refilled her coffee. This is checkmate, Garrett. You'd control every access point to the North Shore. You could ban them from the property, charge them for access, whatever you want. I looked at the maps spread across her table. 70 years my family had been on this lake. 3 years Darlene had been making everyone miserable. And now I had a chance to end her reign completely. How do I register for the auction? County Courthouse, $50 registration fee. Auctions held on the courthouse steps at 10 a.m. Cash, cashier's check, or wire transfer only. No credit cards, no personal checks. She handed me a printed form. But Garrett understands something. If you do this, you're burning every bridge. There's no walking this back. I thought about my grandfather building that dock in 1946, about my daughter telling me not to back down to bullies, about every person on that lake who'd been quietly suffering under Darlene's clipboard tyranny for years. Good, I said. I'm done with bridges. Let's see if I can buy a kingdom instead. I registered for the tax auction that afternoon. $50 and a government form signed in triplicate. The clerk, same woman who'd helped me with deed records months ago, gave me a knowing look. You going after the Lakeshore Holdings parcel? Maybe. Good. Roger Pritchard's been dodging taxes on that property for 3 years. About time someone made him pay. She stamped my registration hard enough to make the desk jump. Auctions at 10 a.m. sharp. Don't be late. County moves faster than Darlene at a zoning hearing. I actually laughed. First time in weeks. Left the courthouse and drove straight to my bank. Withdrew $24,000 in a cashier's check made out to the county. The teller's eyes went wide. Buying a boat? Something like that. I tucked the check in my truck's glove box and sat in the parking lot for a minute, hands shaking slightly. This was it. No turning back now. Next call was to Bryce, the marine contractor who'd rebuilt my dock. I need your help with something, not construction work, strategy. We met at his shop that evening. I spread Margaret's maps on his workbench, explained the whole situation. Bryce whistled low. So if you win this auction, you own the only boat ramp for 5 miles in either direction? And the access road 12 properties used to reach their cabins. Darlene's going to lose her damn mind. He grinned like a kid planning a prank. What do you need from me? If I win, I want to make improvements immediately. ADA accessible ramp, proper parking, maybe a small pavilion. I need cost estimates and a contractor who can start work within a week of the sale. Bryce pulled out his phone, started making notes. ADA ramps around $8,000 installed. Parking lot for 12 vehicles with proper drainage, another 6. Pavilion with grills and picnic tables. Maybe 10 if we keep it simple and don't go crazy with the roof line. He looked up. You're looking at $25,000 in improvements on top of 22 at auction. That's $47,000 total. You good with that math? I know what I'm spending. Just making sure you're not having a midlife crisis I need to talk you out of. He laughed. Because if you are, this is one hell of a way to do it. Most guys buy motorcycles. You're buying a boat launch to spite an HOA president. Spite's cheaper than therapy. Bryce nearly spit out his coffee. Damn right it is. Okay, I'm in. Send me the closing date and I'll have equipment on site the next morning. Darlene's going to drive past and see excavators where she used to park her Lexus. That image alone is worth the contract. The following day, I drove to the township office and met with the community center director, Pastor Joel Reinhardt. Non-denominational guy, ran the building where the July 20th HOA meeting would happen. I'd met him a few times at the hardware store. Decent man. Quiet supporter of people Darlene had bulldozed. Pastor Joel, I need 10 minutes at that HOA meeting to present evidence. He leaned back in his chair, studying me. You're the one all over the news, the cabin dispute. That's me. What kind of evidence? I showed him copies of the financial statements, the fraudulent survey, photos of my sabotaged dock, the video of Roger trespassing. He read through it all slowly, his expression growing darker with each page. 10 members of that HOA have been quietly asking me for months if there's anything they can do about Darlene. I've been telling them to document everything and wait for an opening. He looked up. Congratulations, Mr. Holloway. You're the opening. You get your 10 minutes. Use them well. I spent the next week preparing. Margaret helped me create a 1-page fact sheet summarizing everything. Timeline of harassment, financial discrepancies, fraudulent survey, sabotage photos, Roger's trespassing conviction. We printed 50 copies on the nicest paper staples sold. I bought a cheap projector online so I could display the documents on the community center wall, tested it 3 times to make sure it worked. No technical difficulties, no excuses for Darlene to derail things. Shauna flew in from Denver 3 days before the meeting. Found me on the porch organizing evidence binders at midnight, cicadas screaming in the darkness. Dad, you need to sleep. Can't. Meetings in 72 hours. Then the auctions 3 weeks after that. Everything needs to be perfect. She sat down next to me, took the binder from my hands. You've already got this. You know that, right? You've already won. Everything else is just cleanup. Doesn't feel like winning yet. Because you're still thinking like someone defending himself. Stop that. She pointed at the binders. You're not the defendant anymore. You're the prosecutor. Act like it. That shifted something in my head. She was right. I'd spent 3 months reacting to Darlene's attacks, playing defense, scrambling to prove I belonged on my own land. Now I was setting the agenda, controlling the battlefield. I had the evidence, I had the law, I had $24,000, and the element of surprise. When did you get so smart? I asked. Had a good teacher. She squeezed my shoulder. Now go to bed. Big week coming up. The night before the HOA meeting, Hank Stoddard came by with a cooler of beer and his wife's famous potato salad. We sat on my rebuilt dock watching the sun set over the lake, not saying much. Just 2 guys who'd been on this water long enough to know what mattered and what didn't. You nervous? Hank finally asked. Terrified. Good. Means you're taking it seriously. He cracked open a beer, handed me one. The bottle was cold enough to hurt my palm. You know what Darlene's going to do when she sees you walk into that meeting? Probably try to have me removed. Definitely try to have you removed. Joel won't let her, but she'll make a scene. Hank grinned. It's going to be beautiful watching her realize she's lost control. 3 years she's been queen of this lake. Tomorrow night, her reign ends. We clinked bottles and drank to that. Somewhere across the water, a loon called out, lonely and wild and perfect. The sound of summer. The sound of home worth fighting for. Tomorrow I'd walk into that meeting and show 40 people exactly who Darlene Pritchard really was. And 3 weeks after that, I'd stand on courthouse steps and buy her kingdom out from under her for the price of unpaid taxes. For now, though, I just sat on my grandfather's dock with a good friend and a cold beer, watching stars appear one by one over the mountains. Some moments you don't rush. July 20th arrived hot and humid, air thick enough to chew. I put on clean jeans and a button-down, nothing fancy but presentable. Loaded my truck with evidence binders, projector, 50 fact sheets. Shauna rode with me. Hank followed in his pickup. We reached the community center at 6:30. Meeting started at 7. Parking lot already half full. Old-timers I recognized, plus new faces drawn by newspaper coverage and Facebook drama. Pastor Joel met us at the door. Projectors set up on the north wall. Tested an hour ago. He lowered his voice. Darlene arrived 20 minutes ago with Roger and 3 lawyers. She's been trying to cancel your speaking slot. I told her bylaws are bylaws. Where is she? Inside, front row, preparing for war. Good. So am I. We walked in. 60 folding chairs, 40 people already seated. I spotted Darlene immediately, front row center, cream blazer and pearls, flanked by Roger and a man in an expensive suit. When she saw me, her jaw dropped, then clenched. She whispered urgently to the suit. I took a seat in back, Shauna next to me, Hank on the other side. We waited. 7 p.m. Pastor Joel stepped to the podium. Good evening. Thank you for coming to this emergency meeting of the Lake Crispin Property Owners Association. Before we begin, I remind everyone this is a civil forum. We will treat each other with respect. Darlene stood immediately. Pastor Joel, I move we remove Mr. Garrett Holloway from this meeting. He is not a member and has been spreading malicious Mrs. Pritchard. Joel's voice cut like a knife. You will wait your turn. Mr. Holloway has been granted 10 minutes under bylaws. Sit down. Darlene's face went red. Her lawyer pulled her back into her chair. She sat, vibrating with rage. Joel continued. We're here because 10 members requested this meeting to discuss financial transparency concerns. Mr. Holloway will present evidence, then we'll have board response and discussion. He looked at me. Mr. Holloway, the floor is yours. I walked to the front, plugged in my laptop. First slide, my grandfather's cabin, 1947. Black and white. Grandpa on the porch with a fishing rod, grinning. My name is Garrett Holloway. That's my grandfather. He built that cabin in 1946. My family's owned it 78 years, paid taxes, been good neighbors. Never asked anyone for anything. Next slide, the eviction notice. 3 months ago, Darlene Pritchard sent this claiming my cabin sits on HOA land. Demanded I vacate in 30 days or face $250 daily fines, despite my family's deed predating this HOA by 70 years. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Next slide, fraudulent survey versus Grandpa's survey, side by side. Here's the survey the HOA claims supersedes my rights. Notice what's missing? No surveyor's stamp, no adjacent owner signatures. Because it's not legal. It's a drawing Roger Pritchard submitted while the county clerk was on vacation. Roger stared at his hands. Darlene whispered furiously to her lawyer. I clicked through quickly. Spray-painted doc photos, cease and desist letter, anonymous zoning complaint, every harassment tactic chronologically. But here's what really matters. HOA financial statements filled the screen. 5 years of dues, $47,000 collected, maintenance expenses, $9,000, basically mowing twice yearly. I let that sink in. Then highlighted the line item. $32,000 paid to Pritchard Accounting Services, Roger's company. Never disclosed to members. You never voted on it. Most didn't even know. The room erupted, people talking over each other, some standing. Darlene shot up. This is slander. Our accounting... Sit down, Mrs. Pritchard. Joel's voice was steel. You'll get your turn. Final card, trail camera video. Roger on my property at 11:17 p.m., reaching for the camera, seeing the LED, running. 10 seconds, crystal clear. Undeniable. That's your treasurer, trespassing, attempting to destroy evidence. He's been convicted of criminal trespass, public record. I closed the laptop. Dead silence. 40 people staring at Darlene and Roger like they'd never seen them before. I didn't come to destroy the HOA. I came to show you who's been running it, what they've done with your money, how they treat anyone who questions them. I looked directly at Darlene. You tried to steal my home, you failed. Now everyone knows exactly who you are. I walked back to my seat. 5 seconds of silence, then someone started clapping, then another, then half the room applauded, not for me, for truth being out. Darlene looked sick. Roger was already heading for the exit, lawyer gathering papers fast. Pastor Joel returned to the podium. Mrs. Pritchard, would you like to respond? She opened her mouth. Nothing came out. She looked at faces around her, people she'd bullied for 3 years, and finally understood she had no friends left. This meeting is a farce, she whispered. Then louder, this entire meeting is a farce. I resign as president, effective immediately. She grabbed her purse and walked out. Roger followed. The lawyer followed Roger. Door slammed. Nobody spoke for a moment. Then someone in the third row stood. I move we elect an interim board and conduct a full financial audit. Seconded, 3 voices said at once. And just like that, Darlene's reign was over. The HOA meeting fallout hit fast. By morning, 3 board members resigned. The interim board, Hank and 2 old-timers, froze payments to Pritchard Accounting and hired an independent auditor. Paul Chen's headline, HOA President Resigns Amid Financial Scandal. Pittsburgh TV aired a 3-minute segment that went regional. I thought that was the end. I was wrong. 4 days later, Margaret called. Roger filed bankruptcy on Lakeshore Holdings LLC, emergency filing. He's trying to block the tax sale. My stomach dropped. Can he do that? Bankruptcy triggers automatic stay, preventing creditor asset seizure, but only if filing's legitimate. Real debts. Good faith. Her voice hardened. Roger listed 0 credible debts, just the LLC and taxes. It's a sham to hide assets. What happens now? Federal bankruptcy hearing August 8th, 2 days before auction. Judge sees through it, stay lifts and auction proceeds. Judge doesn't, you're screwed. I hung up and sat on my porch an hour watching clouds build. 3 months of harassment could evaporate because Roger filed paperwork. That night I drove to Darlene's house. White colonial manicured lawn, her Lexus with for sale sign in the window. Lights on inside. I sat across the street 20 minutes, engine off, just watching. Wasn't going to do anything. Didn't know why I was there. Maybe wanted to see if she looked as miserable as I'd felt. A curtain moved upstairs, someone looking out, probably her. I started my truck and left. Revenge wasn't sitting outside someone's house. Revenge was August 10th on courthouse steps. Meanwhile, Darlene launched a whisper campaign. Told anyone listening I was mentally unstable. The dispute fabricated. She and Roger were victims of a vindictive ex-mill worker. She tried getting the county commissioner to block my FOIA requests. The commissioner, Janice Fell, no-nonsense 60s, called Paul directly about the attempted bribery disguised as campaign donation. She offered $3,000 to reconsider my office's adversarial stance toward community governance, Janice told Paul. I told her to leave before I filed ethics charges. That story ran July 28th. Same day I got a letter from Roger's bankruptcy attorney requesting I appear as witness at the hearing. They wanted to depose me about my harassment campaign and predatory intent to acquire property through legal manipulation. I forwarded it to Margaret. She laughed hard. Oh, they're desperate. Beautiful. They'll put you on stand and ask why you want property they refuse to pay taxes on. Please let them. August 8th, federal courthouse 90 miles away. Margaret drove. I was too nervous. Bankruptcy courtroom was small, 20 seats. Roger sat with 2 Navy-suited lawyers. I sat with Margaret in the gallery. The judge was a woman, 50s. Gray hair, reading glasses, expression suggesting she'd heard every bullshit excuse known to humanity. Roger's lawyer stood. Lakeshore Holdings was ongoing business with legitimate expenses. Tax delinquency was unfortunate oversight during personal hardship. Bankruptcy necessary to protect from opportunistic predators exploiting temporary cash flow issues. 15 minutes, words like exigent circumstances and good faith restructuring. Never mentioned Roger personally owned the LLC, that it had no employees or revenue, or that he dodged taxes 3 years. Judge looked at Margaret. Does interested party wish to respond? Margaret stood. Your Honor, this filing is fraudulent. The LLC has no operations, employees, revenue, or contracts. Its sole asset is 90 acres. Mr. Pritchard deliberately let fall into delinquency. He stopped paying in 2021, betting no one would notice. She showed bank statements. $32,000 in HOA funds transferred to Roger's accounts. Mr. Pritchard embezzled from an HOA 5 years while refusing to pay taxes on property he claims through that association. This isn't restructuring, it's hiding assets and avoiding criminal liability. Judge removed her glasses. Mr. Pritchard, stand up. Roger stood, pale, shaking. Did you deliberately stop paying property taxes in 2021? Your Honor, we were experiencing financial. Yes or no? Yes. Did you file this bankruptcy primarily to avoid consequences? Roger's lawyer started objecting. Judge held up her hand. I'm asking your client, Mr. Pritchard? Roger looked at his shoes. Yes. Motion denied. Textbook bad faith. Stay lifted immediately. I'm referring this to U.S. Attorney for Bankruptcy Fraud Investigation. Gavel slam. We're done. Roger turned gray. Lawyers packed in silence. Margaret squeezed my arm. You won. Tax sales on. Day after tomorrow. We walked into August sun, air smelling like hot asphalt and incoming storms. 2 days. 48 hours until I either owned Darlene's kingdom or watched someone else buy it. I got in Margaret's car and exhaled for the first time in a week. You ready? Margaret asked, starting the engine. Ready as I'll ever be. Good, because in 48 hours, you're either a property owner or broke. No in between. I looked at mountains disappearing behind us. Broke I can handle. Losing to them? That I can't live with. She smiled. Then let's make sure you don't. August 10th, the day I'd been building toward for 3 months. Woke at 5, couldn't sleep. Made coffee, sat on my porch watching sunrise over the lake. Water glass smooth, mist hanging low. Peaceful, like the world didn't know what was coming. Shauna came out, sat next to me without speaking. Just handed me the cashier's check. $24,000. I'd moved it from glove box to safe last night, but holding it now made my hands shake. You got this, Dad. What if someone bids higher? Then you tried everything, but that's not happening. She squeezed my shoulder. Today you win. Margaret picked me up at 8:30. Hank followed. The county courthouse, old limestone, wide steps, columns from 1887. By 9:45, maybe 40 people gathered. Auction vultures, investors, flippers, lawyers, plus people I recognized. Paul Chen with camera, 3 Lake families who'd driven down to watch, Pastor Joel in Lake Crispin t-shirt, and standing behind a stone column, Roger Pritchard. No Darlene, just Roger. Wrinkled suit, hollow eyes. He saw me. 3 seconds of eye contact. He looked away first. County clerk came out at 10 sharp. Older guy, 65, carrying folder and wireless mic. Done 1,000 auctions, didn't care about drama. Good morning. Clearfield County Delinquent Tax Auction. Rules are simple. Cash, cashier's check, or wire transfer only. Highest bidder wins. Property as is with all liens attached. He opened his folder. First property, parcel 47B. 90 acres, Lake Crispin North Shore, boat launch and access road. Minimum bid $22,200. Opening bid, I raised my hand. $22,200. Silence. People looking around. Clerk scanned the crowd. 22-2, do I hear 23? Roger stared at me now, face gray, jaw clenched. Going once at 22,200. Someone in back, investor type, clipboard, raised his hand. 23,000. My heart jumped. Margaret touched my arm. Stay calm. 25,000, I said. Loud, clear. Investor hesitated, looked at clipboard, did math, shook his head, lowered his hand. 25,000. Do I hear 26? Clerk scanned again. Going once. Roger stepped forward like he'd bid, then stopped, looked at his shoes, hands in pockets. No money, no check, no way to stop this. He'd bet everything on bankruptcy and lost. Going twice. I looked at my check. 24,000. I'd gone 1,000 over. Would have to scramble. Didn't matter. Worth every penny. Sold to bidder 14, Garrett Holloway, $25,000. Clerk stamped a form, handed it over. Congratulations. Proceed inside for payment and deed transfer. I stared at the paper. County seal, my name, 90 acres, boat launch, access road, everything Darlene pretended to control. Mine. Paul Chen appeared, camera up. Mr. Holloway, how does it feel? I looked past him at Roger walking away down courthouse steps, shoulders slumped, defeated. No drama, no confrontation. Just a man who'd stolen from neighbors, lied to his community, and got caught. Feels like justice. Hank clapped my back. Shauna hugged hard. Margaret grinned. Pastor Joel shook my hand. First round's on me tonight. Inside took 45 minutes. Paperwork, signatures, verification. When we came out, Roger was gone. Just empty space where he'd stood. I stood on courthouse steps holding the deed, The land Darlene and Roger used as a weapon for years. The land they'd stolen from through fraud, now mine. Not because I was richer or smarter, because I refused to back down. Because I documented everything. Because I found allies who knew how to fight. Because I was willing to spend every dollar to prove a point. Darlene tried to take my home. I took her kingdom. Margaret drove us to the boat launch. My boat launch now. Weeds through cracked pavement. Rusted dumpster overflowing. Faded signs nobody maintained. It's a mess, I said. It's perfect, Margaret corrected. In 3 months, it's an ADA accessible public park. And Darlene drives past it every time she leaves the lake. She smiled, assuming she doesn't move first. Think she will? House has been listed 2 weeks. I bet she's gone by September. I looked at the lake. Grandfather's lake. Father's lake. Mine. Good. This place deserves better. Back at my cabin, 20 people waited in my driveway. Old-timers. People who'd suffered under Darlene quietly. They'd brought coolers, chips, a grill already lighting. Hank raised a bottle. To Garrett, the man who bought a boat launch just to piss off an HOA president. Everyone cheered. I stood on my porch, the porch grandfather built in 1946, surrounded by people who understood what this fight was really about. Not property, not money, not revenge. Home, family. Standing up when everyone expects you to back down. I cracked open a beer and watched sun descend toward mountains. Tomorrow I'd plan improvements. Tomorrow paperwork and logistics. Tomorrow I'd turn Darlene's private kingdom into something the community could use. Tonight, I celebrated with people who'd stood by me, and that felt better than any victory I could have imagined. The week after the auction, things moved fast. District Attorney filed formal charges against Roger Pritchard. Embezzlement, fraud, filing false documents, 3 felonies. His accounting firm dropped him within 48 hours. Pennsylvania Board of Accountancy suspended his CPA license pending investigation. Darlene's house sold early September. She moved to Florida, Tampa, without saying goodbye, just packed 1 weekend and left. Her Lexus with LK life plates never appeared again. New owners were a retired Pittsburgh couple who'd never heard of HOAs and had no interest in joining anything. The Lake Crispin Property Owners Association held elections in October. Hank ran unopposed. First order of business, voluntary membership, no dues, no enforcement, just a social club for actual neighbors. 12 families joined. 8 didn't. Nobody cared. I kept my promise. Bryce started work the week I closed, tore out cracked pavement, installed drainage, poured new concrete. Ada accessible ramp with handrails, parking for 12 vehicles plus 2 accessible spaces. Gravel pathway to water's edge, 6 weeks, 28,000 after overruns, done by mid-October. Pavilion came next. Covered structure, 6 picnic tables, 4 grills, 2 bear-proof garbage stations, solar lighting. Bryce built it for $12,000 under budget. We installed a plaque. Lake Crispin Community Park, built 2025, open to all. I donated the boat launch to the township in November, made it official public property so nobody could privatize it again. Township agreed to maintain it. Mowing, trash, winter plowing. In exchange, I kept a small office building where I rented dock slips to fishermen. $50 monthly, enough to cover my property taxes and maintenance. Memorial Day 2026, we held the grand opening. 200 people showed up, families with kids, old-timers, young couples thrilled to have real access. Pastor Joel gave a blessing. Hank spoke about community over control. Paul Chen covered it. From conflict to community, Lake Crispin Boat Launch reopens as public space. I didn't make a speech. Just watch kids running, families grilling, people launching kayaks. This was what the lake was supposed to be. Not a battleground, just a place where people could exist without someone with a clipboard telling them they were wrong. Roger went to trial March 2026. Convicted on 2 counts. Sentenced to 18 months federal prison plus $32,000 in restitution split among HOA members. Darlene never charged. Prosecutors couldn't prove she knew about embezzlement. Didn't matter. Her life here was over. I settled into my cabin. Finished renovations, new roof, updated kitchen, refinished floors. Shauna visited every few months, sometimes with her fiancé who worked in renewable energy. They got engaged on my dock, June 2026. Sunset over water, loons calling. She asked if they could marry there next summer. I said yes before she finished asking. The cabin grandfather built in 1946 would host his great-granddaughter's wedding in 2027. 81 years of family history, unbroken. That felt like the real victory. Hank and I still sit on my dock most evenings when weather's good, drinking beer, watching sunset. Sometimes we talk about Darlene. Mostly we don't. It's past. The lake is peaceful. That's all that matters. Someone asked if I'd do it all again. The harassment, legal threats, 47,000 spent fighting people who should have left me alone. I looked at the water, at grandfather's cabin, at the community park where families picnicked instead of worrying about violation notices. At the life I'd almost lost and fought like hell to keep. Every single time, I said. Because some things are worth fighting for. And home is at the top of that list. If you've got an HOA nightmare story, drop it in the comments. Let's build a library of justice. And if this story hit home, if you've ever felt crushed by petty authority or wanted to see the underdog win, hit that subscribe button. More battles out there. More Darlenes who need stopping. More people who need to know they're not alone. Next week, the story of a man whose HOA tried foreclosing on his mother's house over $300. Spoiler, they picked the wrong family. Thanks for watching. Now go stand up for something.